Media pushback, of course, has already started, the fear mongering. But I found it interesting that the story coming out of the Calgary Herald about three First Nation chiefs are issuing stark warnings that their treaty rights predate Alberta's entry into the Confederation. And I thought, do they realize that Jeffrey Rath is a litigator for First Nations? So what are you doing about that to take that into consideration?
Well, yeah, I think that the Alberta Prosperity Project will be writing a letter to the chiefs today explaining to them, first of all, that the reason that APP was founded separate and apart from some of the other independence groups was out of concern for the fact that other independence groups in Alberta weren't taking the issue of treaty and Aboriginal rights and Indigenous rights in Alberta seriously. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that are not educated in this area that think that Alberta independence means you wave a fairy wand and somehow or another Indians cease to exist, or First Indigenous people cease to exist in Alberta and their rights cease to exist. That's simply a non-starter. So the reason I got involved and was involved in founding APP, along with Lawrence Courtoret, a former vice chief of the Assembly First Nations, et cetera, was to make sure that there was a vehicle for Alberta independence that had a strong foundation of respect for the Indigenous rights of the Indigenous people of Alberta built into the core of the organization, which is what APP is all about. We actually get ovations from people when we talk about how strong APP and how strong an independent Alberta is going to be in support of Indigenous rights. I mean, this is, like, I've been litigating against Canada my entire working career. I can tell you that Canada by far treats the Indigenous people of Alberta worse than it treats Albertans. It's like clear treaty rights to education, clear treaty rights, to economic and agricultural benefits, under the treaty. I mean, things that are absolutely inarguable. Canada litigates, for 10, 20, 30 years and then settles at pennies on the dollar afterwards, right? Canada is no friend of the Indigenous people of Alberta. And, we're looking forward to being able to, an independent Alberta, having constitutionalized Indigenous rights within the framework of the Constitution, constitutionalized resource revenue sharing, within the Alberta Constitution with, the Indigenous nations of Alberta. And I suppose for those groups that want to stay outside of Alberta and want to continue to, live on bended knee to Mummy Ottawa and have Mummy Ottawa give them whatever they, whatever they asked for 20 years after they asked for it, they'd be free to do that. But those Indigenous nations of Alberta that want a new deal and want to have a new constitutionalized relationship with the independent Commonwealth of Alberta, that will be open to them. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't, in my heart of hearts, believe that there is a far better deal to be struck with an independent Alberta on a going forward basis for the Indigenous nations of Alberta than there would be, than Indigenous nations remaining in Canada. I wouldn't be doing this if I did not believe that this was what we were going to accomplish. And this is at the core of the mission of the Alberta Prosperity Project.